What is going on? Comic fam, it's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined. Gang, do I even need to introduce you anymore, Ryland? Like, I feel like you can co-host a show with me.
My reputation precedes itself. You
Uh,
either love me or you hate me, or I don't know. There are
it's one of
there's
the.
not a lot of indifference.
But welcome back. So, gang, if you haven't heard of Ryland Grant, Ryland has been on my show multiple times. Actually, my first guest I ever had, and just a huge friend of the show. So, thanks for always coming on and talking about. Maybe we'll talk about comics, but movies, who knows? Cry
Maybe,
like
who knows?
we'll do a little bit of everything. So you never know where our interview is going to go. That's what we'll talk about some stuff in particular, but we derail fast sometimes just because we haven't got to catch up for a while.
Yeah, yeah. It's I have a show, a quick promo called The Writer's Block,
Mm-hmm.
where David Avalone, the writer of the Elvira books over at Dynamite, and the writer of Drawing Blood with Kevin Eastman, which is an Image book very soon. Go out and pre-order that. But we do creator interviews. It's just, creators sitting around talking shop. And the guiding principle of that show is we start out with a comics business topic, but then we pretty early on veer violently off the road and usually end up arguing about Star Trek captains or who the best James Bond was or whatever. And it is encouraged, and the show is at its best when we do that. And so you have this very well organized show that usually goes a certain way, and then I come in like a wrecking ball, and we do
You
what we
just
do.
Miley Cyrus it. You're just like whatever. Here I am.
Yeah, God,
But
yeah, it's fun.
you do have you do have a new book coming out in the middle when we're recording this, and when this drops and people are listening, it'll be the tail end of your Kickstarter Peacekeepers chapters 3 and 4. You're running it now. If someone hasn't gotten to hear it yet, like what is Peacekeepers, and tell them why they should get it.
Yeah, Peacekeepers is the passion project, you know. Yeah, I mean, I've written film and TV for, I don't know, 15 plus years in Hollywood, and have put out books in comic shops for a while and all that stuff. And you end up doing a lot of projects for them, meaning like this is what the market is dictating you write, and this is what we'll hire you to write, and all that stuff. And it is rare, increasingly so, that you do one for you. And Peacekeepers was my passion project. It is a Fargo-esque crime drama, kind of a cops and robbers thing, but really kind of like a deep character piece. Um, you know, um, I have um, I have described it as it is a dark, quirky crime drama in the vein of Fargo or No Country for Old Men. I call it a love letter to case season police dramas like True Detective and The Wire, to Elmore Leonard novels, which I'm a huge fan of, and to comic masterpieces like Criminal and 100 Bullets. Now that was kind of the canned pitch, so I'm sorry for doing that. But those are the influences, you
Yeah.
know. And so it's these are my favorite things, and they have influenced me like nothing else. And I am processing that in a lot of ways while processing really what it's about. It is I'm a I write film and TV. I write mostly action stuff. I've written for J.J. Abrams and Ridley Scott and Justin Lin and F. Gary Gray and Luc Besson and blah 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 blah. So I'm always going to bring you good ass-kicking action. The
Right.
cops and robbers stuff is great, but this is really, like I said, it's a character piece, and it is the study of this small town. Now I grew up in Detroit, which is, kind of I don't know. Detroit is a different place than where the Peacekeepers takes place, but it really is a small town. It is a small community where if something happens over here, it greatly affects here. But the Peacekeepers grew out of two things. One, when you live in Detroit, you go quote unquote up north. You go to northern Michigan, these kind of redneck towns, higher in the mitten.
Just throw
Um,
your hand.
yeah, and life is a little bit different there, and it is very similar to when I graduated, right around the time I graduated college from the University of Michigan. Go Blue. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, we got an Ohio State fan here, so
I know it's
there may be fisticuffs, but we're gonna save it. Yeah.
right.
Um, but right around the time I graduated college, my dad, my stepmom, my sister, they moved down to Tennessee, and they moved to this town called Crossville, which is like halfway between Nashville and Knoxville in the mountains of
Mhm.
Tennessee. I think it's it may still be statistically the least diverse county in the United States. Um, uh and there's ugly that goes along with that, but there's also like a lot of really interesting, again, it is just such a small community. The way that, the way people get together, the way politics works, and I don't mean like Trump or Obama, I mean like how the
Yeah.
town gets run,
Right.
how disputes get solved, how people come together in a way that they can't possibly in like a big city or something like that, was just all really interesting to me. And so, I wanted to set a story in a place like that. You have this pond and it's a small pond. And so when you throw a rock in, there's a big splash and it creates waves everywhere, right? And so when something big's happening here, how does it affect this person and that person and this
Mhm.
person and that person? And so it's really the story of this community, and we're following a lot of people, um and it's almost like Nashville, and not the TV series, but the Robert Altman film, where you're cutting between a lot of stories and a lot of people and a lot of drama, and that was kind of a high wire act, but I think we did a
Yeah.
really good job with it. And so yeah, there's a lot of art in it, and there's a lot of good ass kicking, so something for everybody.
So good. Well, and so you did a Kickstarter a couple years ago for chapters 1 and 2.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
at 3 and 4. Is this the end of the story, or is there more? Or
I have the entire series done, and
okay,
so 5 and 6 are in the can and ready to roll out. And they'll come, they may come end of the year or something like that.
okay,
I'll get them back out. You'll have the whole story. But it is a thorough and complete, a fully realized story.
yeah,
It's there for you. So yeah,
yeah,
so check it out. And of course, I mean, my Kickstarters, it's always a great time to hop on the Ryland Grant train. I have signed issues of Aberrant and Banjax and Suicide Jockeys and The Jump and all the stuff that, you guys are familiar with, and rare con variants. And I don't pop up a lot. I'm busy with other stuff. And so I don't know. Um, it's been a little while on Kickstarter
yeah.
because I got so busy with film and TV stuff, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, every once in a while, a couple of times a year, hopefully from now on, there's a Ryland Grant pop-up shop where you can get some good stuff. So yeah, come read the whole catalog. It's there's some good stuff in there.
Oh,
Different stuff. Yeah.
oh, for sure. And what it is, you have a wide variety of different, different, like you said, Van Jackson, Aberrant and Suicide Jockeys. Like they're all unique stories, and then especially Peacekeepers. And that's what I love about like your writing is you can tell you want to have action in it. You can tell that, but you also they're almost like love letters sometimes. I feel like to movies because it feels so cinematic in the production of the comic. And we've talked about it even on the show. You know how you title your page of being the director and writer and things like that. Like it makes sense that you're involved in film and TV because of that, and it kind of reads like that.
Yeah, it's the only way I know how to present something. I mean, again, I've written in Hollywood for 15 years, and then I mean, I went to the American Film Institute Conservatory as a director. That's where David Lynch studied, and Darren Aronofsky, and a bunch of other really talented filmmakers. And so yeah, so I mean, that's my education. That's how I think. That's right. And so I treat each comic issue like a little film I'm directing, and beginning, middle, and end. And it's interesting because maybe I've told the story on here before, and stop me if I have, but maybe I haven't told it in a long time. But comics kind of saved me as a dramatist, I guess. I think when I started at that point, I had probably been writing in Hollywood for about 10 years or so. And I hate to be the guy that complains about getting paid to write movies and TV shows for a living. You sound like a jerk. But it was just a really weird time, and
Yeah.
it's maybe even a weirder time now because streaming is tanking and all that stuff. But you know, I saw Pulp Fiction when I was a kid, and I said I want to do that. I want to tell stories like that. And so I moved out to Los Angeles, and I went to the American Film Institute Conservatory, and I got my snooty director education. But by the time I got spit out into the workforce, Hollywood stopped making films like that. and I ended up, in a weird way, kind of getting pigeonholed as like an action writer. Which is great because I mean, look at the wall behind me. I mean, I love Give Me, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, Die Hard. I mean, some of my favorite stuff. Chuck Norris movies, Karate Kid, whatever it is. I love that stuff, but you can't even make those films anymore, which is a thing. But
Yeah.
there were these other stories that I wanted to tell, and I couldn't tell them in Hollywood. Hollywood, I don't know, you can tell like maybe five different kinds of stories. They want them told a different way, a very specific way. And I
Mm.
got very good at telling those stories. They bought my house, but uh, but I'm 10 years in and I'm miserable. It feels like I'm laying bricks or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with laying bricks, but it wasn't what I signed up for necessarily. I felt, I might as well, it was like as mowing lawns or something, it was a trade. It was a job, and in the beginning it didn't feel like a job. And so I just took a long look at things, and I'm like, well, what do I need to do to, like, I can't do this for another 10 years. So either I have to quit, which I don't want to quit, or something needs to change radically. And so the answer ended up being comics. And the beauty of comics is, like, you can tell, any kind of story any way you want to. As long as it's good, you will find an audience, like we find on Kickstarter, like we find with, the people who watch your show.
Mhm.
um there are people out there that want this stuff. There's not enough of it. And so if you tell good stories, they're going to find you, and every time you come to the table with something, they're going to support you and they're going to celebrate you. And that's been great. And so yeah, it's kind of what you're getting at. It's like with the comics, I'm telling some wacky stories, and even if they're not wacky stories, I'm telling them in a really wacky way. I made a promise to myself that I would never tell a straightforward A to B to C story. That I was gonna go full Pulp Fiction. I was gonna experiment with structure and
Yeah.
and unreliable narrators and conflicting points of view, and I was gonna use a lot of experimental elements, and I was just gonna get crazy and fun with it. And they people have loved me for it, and I was celebrated for it. And then the irony is, well, I started kind of, I don't know, I just went for broke and started
Yeah.
taking all of this stuff that made me feel alive in comics, and I started applying it, whether they liked it or not, to my film and TV work. And that has kind of helped me move things forward. I mean, because of that, since I started comics, right? And over the course of the pandemic, when nobody was getting anything made, I got two films made that are going to come out this year. I set up a TV series at Lionsgate and got three actors attached to it. I have another film that's on the 2 yard line that's going to shoot in Germany. I got another one that an action joint that takes place in Russia, like a week before the Ukrainian invasion, and that's looking like it's going to go. And so yeah, comics saved me in a real way. Like, I mean, they helped me feel better about all this stuff, but
Yeah.
then everything I was doing in comics really just kind of, I don't know, it helped me get the film stuff where it needed to be.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've appreciated so much about, our friendship of having these conversations so often is, um, I think this will be like your sixth time on the show. So you hold the record. Uh, although
Send me a plaque. I
Mark
got,
Russell's coming for it. So
God, yeah, all right,
he's behind you. He's at 4. So we're getting
man.
there. So
Okay, yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
it's funny because I will record. I'm like, I bet Ron's gonna drop a Kickstarter real soon, since he's like, there was a sense in the air. It's like Mark did an interview with.
Yeah, 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 sniffing around. He's only one away, so
So,
I gotta, yeah,
but like our first conversation, was when The Jump came out,
yeah,
and you were kickstarting for that, and we get to see the process of all these things, but also just the longevity of how that must be draining too, though, as like a creative. We've talked about some of these things. It seems like that, 2 3 years ago, they're like, I'm hoping this comes out. I know, like, and now
yeah,
we're seeing the trailer for State of Consciousness, and like things
yeah,
like that, like when I get so much more hype and excited for that film, like, oh my goodness, we talked about that like 3 years ago or whatever it
yeah,
was.
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
how is, and then, with Kickstarter's delays and things like that, of like, spacing it out between you, how do you process as a creator of creating things and then waiting to either release it via
Yeah.
like a comic Kickstarter, or waiting for things to get, how does that work for you? Like, how do you process that?
It's very hard to process,
Yeah.
and I had to learn how to process it. I've
Okay.
been doing this for a long time now, and well, here's the thing. So it's even longer than that. Okay. So what I will say is that with a film project, if you have the greatest script that's ever been written and it gets greenlit, you are still lucky if it is on a screen somewhere in 5 years. Those are the facts of the matter. Um, there are exceptions to every rule, but that is the rule. Um, sometimes it's just like, hey, there's a window here for somebody to shoot. We need something right now. Let's go. Even then, it's a year or two, but it's usually five. And the one of the films that I have coming out later this year um, uh, is um, is this film with Matt Dillon and Fernando Trueba called Haunted Heart. Um, and That was the first film I ever got paid to write in Hollywood. 15, 16 years ago now. And so I was hired to write it, and it was a really great script. And before the last writer strike, not this one, the one before that, we had a director who had just won an Oscar for foreign language film with Bella Polk, Fernando Trueba. We had Penelope Cruz, like as big a star worldwide as you had back then. We had Billy Bob Thornton, who was on a heater back then also. So we had the three of those guys, and we were on the 2 yard line, and then the strike happened, and when a strike happens, films start to get categorized, right?
Yeah.
It's you have anything that is shooting before the strike happens can continue to shoot and can come out. Anything that doesn't get into production before then has to wait, and who knows how long it's going to go, right? Like we lost a year with this current strike. So, ooh, I'm tumbling here. Um, uh, so at that point, we had this film and it was ready to go, but then Hollywood, studios started throwing money at people like Penelope and Billy Bob to do, almost anything back then. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, we need to get this into production. We need this. So we got plucked, and so it's like, does this was gonna be a smaller film. It was gonna be a prestige thing, and so it's like, do Penelope and Billy Bob take, like, some low pay to do a prestige project, a passion project on a Greek island, or does Penelope take $12 million to do Sahara 2 or whatever she signed on for back then? And that's not really a question. So the idea is, oh, we'll do it later, but then you come back to the table and Billy Bob's like, oh, I'm directing a film now. So it's like, okay, well, do we need to replace Billy Bob? Penelope doesn't want to do it without Billy Bob. Oh, Billy Bob's back. Well, Penelope can't do it until after this and this. And then,
Yeah.
and then 15, 16 years go by. And I thought the thing was dead. And it was right in the middle of a pandemic again, when nothing's happening. And maybe it was because nothing was happening that Fernando, the director, like, really started kind of going back through things and being like, what do I have here? What do I want to do? And he just called me at some point. And he's the one guy that calls me on Skype because it's an international thing. So my phone starts ringing with a Skype call. And it doesn't say Fernando Trueba on it because it doesn't want randos following him. It's his alias or whatever. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I haven't seen that in a while. And I get on with him, and I think my daughter Naomi was at soccer practice, and so I had to, like, climb in the back of the car while she was at soccer practice and take this call. And he's like, this is going to sound crazy. I think I want to shoot the film, and I think I want to shoot it like next fall. And I'm like, okay. And so, blink of an eye, they're flying me to Greece, and we're planning this thing. The film took place on a Greek island, and the whole time I'm like, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Because that's the
Right.
constant state you're stuck in, and you've seen it play out over the years, which is funny. You can look back through the old things and be like, oh wow, yeah, look at this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the constant state you're in, and things always get kicked down the road, or this or that, the other thing. It always takes twice as long as you need to, as it needs to, at least. What I got used to is, so early in my career, uh, all of my eggs are in one basket, all of my chips are on one number, and sometimes that number hits, and hooray! It usually doesn't. there's very little that gets made in Hollywood. There's a lot that gets developed and very little that actually gets made, even when it has everything going for it. And so when I only had one thing going or two things going and something would fail, it would be devastating. It would just wipe me out completely. And I would, whatever, I'd be depressed for 3 months, and and I would find some way to get back on the horse or whatever. A lot of people, it just wipes out completely.
Yeah.
Some people can't recover from one of those things. I've had 50 and I'm still kicking. And maybe it's because I've had 50 that I take it so well, but the operating procedure now is to constantly keep 12 balls in the air. Because every month, two, three of those balls are going to fall, and
Yep.
hopefully you get two or three more back in the air, and you just keep juggling. And so juggle, juggle, juggle. And so yeah, so I don't have time to mourn
Right.
the losses or the delays because I'm juggling other shit.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you have to be, not just in the film business, but just in life, just keep moving. And what I've learned, is that nothing's dead.
Yep.
I just had a film resurrected after 16 years. And it can feel like they're dead. But it's even like so I've talked about this on the show before, where at some point, when I first came into the film business, original screenplays were the rule, right? You had an
Yep.
idea, you wrote a screenplay. If it was good, you sold it. Um, then this strike happens, financial crisis happens. Hollywood completely remakes the way they do business. They're making a third as many films as they were like the day before suddenly. And original ideas were, you couldn't sell them to fucking save your life. The IP revolution happens, and everything needs to be based on a book, a comic book, a video game, whatever. And so I had a very I had a few lean years, right? Where I'm trying to sell original ideas and couldn't do it. I watched a lot of my really talented friends, a lot of the people I went to AFI with, kind of wash out and go back to whatever, Pennsylvania, and sell insurance. And I was close. I'm like, well, what is
Right.
it? But at some point I'm in the shower and I have the obvious idea. Well, if they want IP, let me give them IP. And so I took an idea I would have written as a film, a spec script, a pitch, a couple of days before. I wrote it as a short story. I got the short story published, and then overnight we had this bidding war over it. We had Justin Lin on one side, coming off of Fast Six, which was like the largest opening in Universal history at that point, may still be, and we had Brett Ratner and Robert De Niro on the other side. Tyler Perry made an offer. There was just a lot of fun. Um, and my agents thought it was a fluke. I knew that this is where the business was headed somehow, and
Yeah.
um, and so I just kept doing it. And since then, that has been my business. I've done it probably, I don't know, 7, 8 more times with short stories, and then started doing it with comic books. The Jump's out now. Aberrant was set up like 2 weeks before the second issue hit comic shops. And I mean, that's been an odyssey also. Where's Aberrant? um, but
Right.
um but uh but some of those short stories, there are short stories that I've sold 3 times. And it is the beauty of having IP versus having a spec, where it's like, if I sold a movie idea to somebody and wrote a script for them, they would just own it and it would be dead forever. If I have the IP, my lawyers negotiate so that IP comes back to me after a year if they do nothing with it, so I can sell it again. I can do a different version of it. I can, yeah. And so I don't know. You learn to resurrect these things. You learn to remake these things. You learn to just, it's like, okay, well, the thing with Justin Lin didn't work out. Well, let's take that and let's turn it into this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and
Um,
I think that's great. Life eventually, you can't just keep doing the same thing and go, oh, I hope something changes. You have to see where it is, adapt and go, and say,
yeah.
okay, this is where I want to take something, and if it works, cool. And so to start to see that shift of going from selling the scripts to creating the intellectual property that stuff like that, like it's brilliant, honestly, because you don't want to just be stuck like, well, let's hope this works.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, the IP was good in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, just from a business standpoint, it works,
Yeah.
and you're right. But more than anything, that really saved me, because I've been paid well to write in Hollywood, but up until very recently, didn't have my name on a lot of stuff. I was getting paid to polish turds sometimes. I've rewritten stuff you've seen, but if my name's not on it, it's not really kosher to talk about. And
Right.
sometimes I took a good movie and made it slightly better, and sometimes I took a really shitty movie and made it slightly more tolerable. So it's not really something to brag about so much anyway. But I didn't have my stuff out there, right? And I had sold a lot of my stuff, but again, so little gets made. Um, but the thing with the if you're writing a novel or a short story or a comic book, it exists as that thing, right? I could have written the Banjack spec script that might have sold and made me some money, and then it would have died on a shelf at Paramount or something like
Right.
that. Now it's out there. It's 50 years from now, my kids can go on whatever the equivalent of Amazon is then, whatever conglomerate sucked it up, or and Amazon Jollibee or whatever it is then.
Yeah.
um and they can buy the book.
Yeah.
The book is its thing. I have told the story, and it's out there, and that's I don't know, my biggest worry is my existential angst comes from I don't know, I don't want to die with stories in my head. I don't want stories to die on the shelf. I don't and
Yeah.
so I think where we keep heading with all of this stuff is like it's really about the work more than anything, right? Like
Right.
there is just you can't control any of the other stuff. You can't control when stuff comes out and if stuff comes out. And again, you look back 3 years ago, and maybe I'm saying like, oh yeah, this is, it looks like this is going to happen, and then it looked like that was going to happen. But you look now, and whatever, maybe it took another year,
Right.
or something like that. And I just said, hey, this is what it looks like now. And some of that stuff may happen sooner. Some of that stuff may, I know you can, these movies are coming out. You can go see the trailers for them. Check my social media. They're scheduled and everything. State of Consciousness in theaters, March 15th. Um, but um, uh, but yeah, so you can't control any of that,
No.
and there's no use really getting bent out of shape,
Right.
in terms of stuff you can't control. So what you can control is you can wake up every day and you can do the work, right?
Right.
You put one foot in front of the other, you create stuff, you put it out there. Um, and so that's the thing, man. That's all I can do. It's all I can control. And so these days I only get down, I only get frustrated when I'm not making stuff.
Right.
And that's a me problem, and not a the universe conspiring against me a problem. And so I'm the only one that can fix it. And it's up to me. And that's a very powerful place to operate from, right? Because you're just in control of everything. So just
Yeah.
shut up and work, right?
Right. And I like that you are working, because the one thing I can't control is how mad I was at you leaving me on a cliffhanger with this book of Peacekeepers for a year or so, or 2 years. And I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
what happens? So I'm glad when I saw Peacekeeper chapter 3. I'm not spoiling anything, because if you haven't read Peacekeepers chapters 1 and 2, recommend going. I think you can get that too through the Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Issues 1 through 4 are available.
yeah.
The entire fit of business. Yeah, like
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're new to it, plenty of opportunities to catch up. But yeah, it's a good cliffhanger, right? It's
it
like
is,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
because it was one of those, I read it prepping for an interview whenever we did that one, and then I read it when I got the book, when it that
yeah.
was fulfilled. I'm like, I need to go back and reread Peacekeepers, just because it had been a while, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot that I hated Ryland for a little bit because of this. Like, they just leaves me hanging here. Like, what?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it is really good, and but that's what gets, like we talked about. You have an idea, you have something fully figured out, that where you want to go, and if you read chapters 1 and 2, I would be surprised if people like, you know what? I don't really care about finding out what goes on 3 and 4. Like, no, that'd be a silly way to do it.
Yeah,
So
that'd be
it makes
terrible.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well. Again, I mean, the entire series is done,
Yeah.
and doing the work, creating the books is easy for me. What is difficult is running the Kickstarter. Is like
Yeah.
this is where it gets in, and it's like I mean, I love interacting with the whatever, the fans, the readers, the people, whatever you want to talk about. That's a lot of fun. Uh, getting people the books and hearing, they read through them and I get compliments, or they tell me stuff that could have been better, or, whatever. All that stuff is awesome. That's half the reason you do this stuff. What sucks is is building the campaign, promoting the campaign daily, having to mail out hundreds of packages, and packaging comic books instead of creating comic books is what's difficult for me. And I mean, you sort of hinted at it. There was a long break
Yeah.
from Kickstarter, and it was probably about 2 years. I mean, I ran the Jump 3, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like
Yeah.
that. But before then, it was like a 2 year gap, and I had run I had run three Kickstarters in 1 year, and so it was Jump One, Peacekeepers 1 and 2, and then Jump 2. And it was so much. I mean, it just wore me to the nub,
Right.
it was a good time, but really wore me to the nub. And I remember I was talking with my stepdad, who's just been, very supportive with all this stuff, and so he's a good person to talk to. And I remember him asking me, the whatever that third Kickstarter had wrapped up, and he's like, so when's the next one? And I'm kind of like, to tell you the truth, I am kind of hoping that I am so busy with film and TV stuff that I can't do the next one, at least for a while.
Yeah.
And that ended up being the case. I mean, it was weird because it was the pandemic was still going, but had these two films go into production, and they're flying me to Greece to rewrite stuff. And I was actually supposed to go to Italy on the other film, but then Italy became the center of the pandemic. We set up this TV series, which was like, quite an odyssey. It's this big kind of John Wick action joint, but with a prestige bent. It's like Successions with swords. Have Daveed Diggs and Emmy River Latman from Umbrella Academy, and just a really cool thing. And then we had these other things. Again, this film in Germany, and this thing that takes place in Russia that's not actually shot in Russia, but all of that stuff happened in
Yeah.
like over the course of those 2 years. And so I was too busy. And then at some point, and then really what broke that was the writer strike. And so
Yeah.
suddenly, because we set up the TV series, we sold it to a studio, and we were like literally a day or two away from starting to have all of the network meetings. We had all the network meetings set. We were going to figure out where this thing was going to air,
Right.
and then the strike happens, and can't do any of it suddenly. And so everything grinds to a halt, and suddenly I had some time, and I'm like, well, I don't know, I could start writing some scripts that I can't sell for over a year. And I did some of that, and I wrote a novel, I did a lot of stuff. But I'm like, you know what, I mean, everybody keeps telling me what the hell happened with Peacekeepers and where's more Jump, and so yeah, why don't I start releasing this stuff? So back to it.
And yeah, it's rightfully so. But I mean, I get that as sheesh. I did one comic exclusive with you for a
Yeah.
cover, and I had to send out like 50 packages. I'm like, this sucks. Like,
Yeah, never again.
I'm like, everyone's like, oh, are you gonna do another exclusive cover? I'm like, no. I'm like, why not?
Absolutely
First
not.
off,
Yeah.
you can't beat the one that Fabio created,
It's really good. So good.
and
It's like the
that
best
we
one.
did like
It's the best one we've done. Yeah. So,
you can't beat that. And then second, I'm like, no, I don't like. I'm like, I don't want to sell. I don't want to ship. I don't want to package up. So I get that. Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
just like you want to create and it's stuff like that. So we've hinted at it a lot, and talked about briefly. But like I said, you said State of Consciousness trailer is out. People can
yeah,
like pause this video, like, and if I wouldn't get YouTube strikes, I'd just put it in right here, but I would get YouTube strikes. So just pause the video, go look at the trailer for State of Consciousness. Talk to me like, because you've talked a lot about, getting to be as a screenwriter, not always having your name attached to stuff. Like,
yeah, yeah,
and it's now you're getting to see like this is coming out, and I can go, I pulled up that IMDb and I'm like, there's your name right there. You're, the credit, like,
yeah, yeah.
what's that like now that you're starting to see some of, we've talked about like the frustrations a little bit,
Yeah.
like I bet that's got to be a pretty good vibe, at least, of like, yes, things are creating and you're getting to tell stories in a different format than your comics and stuff as well.
Yeah, it's nice to say I worked on this specific project as opposed to I worked with these people,
Right.
that's a good thing. But they did a really good job on the State of Consciousness trailer. Again, like, hit pause, go look at it. State of Consciousness, Lionsgate. It's a really great trailer, and it bodes well for the project that it's such a weird time in movies right now.
Yeah.
There's not a lot that gets released in the theater. I mean, they announced, people were in an uproar because the Roadhouse reboot.
Yeah.
Amazon decided not to release it in theaters. They're gonna release it direct to Prime Video, which seems insane to me because if there's one thing that can and will and should make money in a movie theater right now, it's that movie. And like I mean, it's a great IP. Jake Gyllenhaal is one of the biggest stars in the world. They have Conor McGregor in his first
Right.
real film role, and he looks like terrifying and awesome. The trailer is funny. It's great. It just looks like a slam dunk to me. And if they're saying, oh, this isn't worth putting in a theater, I don't know what is. And then on the other side, you have State of Consciousness, which is, it's a high concept thing, but it was made during the pandemic, under kind of a lot of restrictions, and so it's a smaller thing. Emil Hirsch is a big enough star, I guess, but he's not Jake Gyllenhaal, and Lionsgate is like, we're putting this in theaters, everywhere, and
Yeah.
usually Lionsgate, we went from there was a lot of talk. It's like, okay, well, we sold this to Lionsgate. What it looks like maybe is that what Lionsgate will do is they'll buy a couple of films like this, they'll package them together, and they sell them to a streamer. So they'll sell Netflix 3, 4 films at a time. And so yeah, it looks like that. Netflix premiere, great, great, great. But it's like Lionsgate is like, no, we got something here. So theaters, theaters everywhere. But then also what Lionsgate will usually do is they'll do like a 30-second trailer in-house. And you look at the trailer, I mean, whoever cut the trailer is a genius. I think the trailer might actually be better than the film. And that's a different story. But yeah, I mean, they went to the best trailer house in town and had a full 2-minute trailer cut, and it sings, it kicks like a mule. And so yeah, that's good. It's cool to see, and it's good to be able to point to it, and the poster's great. You can hop on my social media at Rylan Grant and see the poster. They did a great job with that, and so yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, it's great, and and hopefully people enjoy the film, enjoy the ride. And then so there's that, and that's genre, and it's, people that love comic books should really like that story and whatnot. Haunted Heart, the film in
Right.
Greece with Matt Dillon and Ida Fulch and from Fernando Trueba, the Spanish director. Um, that it's just a really great prestige film. It's the kind of it's a Sundance film, it's a Cannes film.
Yeah.
We'll see it probably at either Cannes or Berlin to open up. And I'm just really excited about it. It was, when I was young and I saw Pulp Fiction, I said I want to do this. This is an actual extension of that.
Yeah.
Um, and it was cool because I just actually coincidentally, about 2 hours before you and I got on, I had a very long and fruitful and interesting conversation with Fernando about the next one, which sounds pretty awesome. So if I get pretty frustrated in Hollywood.
Yeah.
If I could do a film like this, every couple of years or something like that, it would keep me very happy. But it's like, this is an award winner, and who knows how an international film is gonna play with that stuff in the United States. But if it's in competition at Cannes or Berlin, this is all of Fernando's films get nominated for Goyas, which are the Spanish Oscars, and European Film Awards, which are
Yeah.
the European Oscars and stuff like that. This is that kind of film, and
Yeah.
so and I saw it, and it's great, and Matt is great in a way that you've never seen Matt be. At least you haven't seen Matt be in a while, because he's getting older, and he's not the ass-kicking, handsome, 30-year-old guy that everybody saw him as forever. So it's a different Matt.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. Um, and he really dove into the character in an interesting way. So it's just good, man. And it's like, and that, you know, I mean, screenwriters are so minimized in the United States. You know, I mean, we kind of saw it play out with the strike. I don't need to get into all the politics of that, but it's you know, it's like, yeah, you wrote the script, now get the fuck out of here, you know. And there's a lot of that, and I don't think the smart directors do that. The smart producers do that, but I don't know, it happens too often. But with Haunted Heart, you know, it was just you know, Fernando was just like Fernando, who doesn't need to listen to anybody, was like, "You're my partner in this,
Yeah.
and I can't figure out how to do this on this Greek island without you. So come out and let's figure it out together." And so, you know, for weeks, he and I mean, you imagine this film in your mind. And we conceived of this thing like 15, 16 years ago in a hotel room in Los Angeles, right? And this is a film that takes place in you know, on a Greek island in the middle of nowhere, and it's going to be shot. We don't know that at the time, but 15 or 16 years later. And so, you know, you can't possibly imagine what it's actually going to be like. And so there was this process of, well, let's fly there, let's find the actual locations, let's start to mold the script around the
Yeah.
actual locations. And so there's a lot that doesn't add up for obvious reasons. But man, what really struck me in a like universe winking at you, God shot sort of way is how much we actually found there. Like, meaning we imagined something random, you know, 15 years ago, halfway across the world, and then we go to Greece, this remote Greek island, and it's right there staring at us. You know, there was this moment where the thing takes place at it's like a restaurant on an island, and we wrote this scene where it's like he steps out of the kitchen onto this wooden deck where everybody dines, right, you know, right on the bay, and then he steps down a staircase, and there's like a chicken coop over here, and just weird geographic stuff,
Yeah.
and that dynamic, that geography would become very important through the entire script. And then the location scout, we're looking at would be restaurants or whatever, and he takes us to this one, and we have a great feeling about it right off the bat, you know, beautiful view and all this stuff. And then we step out of the kitchen onto a wooden deck, and we turn to our left, and there's a staircase right there, and we walk down the staircase, and I'll be damned if there wasn't a rooster staring right up at us when we got down that staircase. And it was just like, wow, this is like, yeah, like what's happening here?
Yeah.
This is weird.
That's so cool.
Yeah. But it was like, but it was a true collaboration, and a true like him respecting my opinion, and
Yeah.
needing to bounce ideas off of me, and him saying like, "Hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think?" And he's he's a master. So there's not a lot that guy needs to be told, but sometimes you see something. Sometimes it's like, "Hey, well, did you look at this?" And he's like, "Oh wow, that's really interesting. What if we did this, this, and this?" And it's like it's not a it's like batting a ball back and forth,
Yep.
you know? And that's where stuff really starts to come to life. And too many directors here in the States that they don't. It's why we have shitty films. It's because nobody there's very little collaboration. Nobody can
Yeah.
tell somebody no. Nobody can suggest an idea. And I've always been one where it's like, well, best idea wins, and I don't care if it's mine. I don't care if it's from an actor. I don't care if it's from the craft service person. I don't care if it's from somebody's mom who's visiting set. If there's a good idea, give it to me. Like, you know, let's get it in. You know.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's the way to go, like for sure.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, I want to respect your time, but gang, Peacekeepers, Kickstarter's live. I'm telling you, go get it. If you backed the first one, you already know. But if you haven't, go get the second one. Here, chapters 3 and 4. A lot of great tiers that we've talked about, things like that. State of Consciousness is in theaters in what, March, isn't it?
March 15th. Yeah.
March 15th.
Yeah.
So much goodness. And honestly, follow Ryland on socials and things like, because what I love about you is you promote your stuff, like, which you should, but you also bring me down a rabbit hole of childhood nostalgia with the things that you post. I mean, look at your back wall, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Like,
We'll do yeah. It gets crazier and crazier. Yeah. I may scare some of the viewers with this, but yeah, in the The Anniversary Way is, yeah, a lot of stuff.
It's so
Yeah.
good. Like,
So
I
it's a
mean,
museum.
I've been literally saying, is that an American Gladiators in the behind you?
Oh
That yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That is one of the original casting posters. They would you couldn't put out, there was no internet when it came out in what was it, 1987 or something like that. And so they drove to gyms and they drove to places where people worked out outdoors and they tacked these things up on poles and stuff like that. Yeah, that's one of the original, like, you know, it says become a TV superstar.
It's funny because I literally, my wife and I watched the documentaries
Ah,
over
it's
the
so good.
summer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I actually was in Erie, PA, the summer
Yeah.
too. And now we're going to a Comic Con that Nitro is going to be at. So,
Yeah. Dan Clark is great.
yep,
I am talking to him about coming on the show. He's written some great books. He wrote the memoir of his,
yeah,
his time on American Gladiators, and that was actually what gave birth to the Netflix documentary. It's a great book, but then also he almost died. He had a heart attack and came and was clinically dead for a little while and came back, and it gave him this new perspective on life and what's important, and he embraced all these things. And so he wrote a second book called F Dying, and which is kind of a manual for life that is really good and really interesting. And so the writer's block, we are very interested in people who did other things and then became very
yeah.
talented writers, and he certainly qualifies. But also, he's just like a great guy. He's just awesome. So big Dan Clark fan, and so
Oh,
I'm glad to see a Nitrosance happening.
I'm excited because like now I want to go read those books
Yeah,
and check them out because I that's what I love doing is talking to creators and people who writes, and I've been getting to doing novels and things like that, and so yeah,
yeah,
now I gotta check out that book eventually. So
yeah. He's
I'll
good,
do it.
man.
So,
Yeah.
Ron, anything that we've talked about a lot, and I know we could talk about tons of stuff. But is there anything that we haven't hit on that you're like, "Ooh, I'd love to touch on this real quick"?
Yeah, no, I don't know, it is so weird. I mean, it's God, I am worried about film and TV. I'm worried about art in general.
Mm.
Um, there is so here's the thing. So we take a year off because of the pandemic, right? And not the pandemic. Well, there was the pandemic, which
Right.
changed everything. Then we take a year off because of the writer's strike. That's where I was going with this. My dog's barking, so it's kind of distracting me. So I apologize. But so we come back after a year. Again, we had set this TV show up and blah 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 blah, and so we all come back to the table, and it's like, okay, the strike's over, and yay 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 yay, let's get this TV series to a network. And CAA tells us it's dead out there. Nobody's buying anything. You should wait 6 months before you take it out, which is insane. We have a show that's already at a studio. We have three amazingly talented, wildly in-demand actors. We have more going for this project than anything. And CAA is telling us it's a wasteland. And it's like, well, okay, we just took a year off. You're telling us to take 6 more months off? Um, Meanwhile, there's nothing on TV right now. My wife and I, we like to watch TV at night, and we love when there's a new season of The Bear or whatever. Um, there's nothing on now. Like, she ends up watching some weird reality show, that whatever pops up on screen. And I do dishes and practice martial arts in another room. We rarely go to the movies anymore because there's nothing. There's just very little in theaters anymore.
Right.
Um, we are on life support as a business right now,
Yeah.
and that is problematic. And I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah.
I would just say that if there are movies that you're interested in, go see them in the theaters. If there's good TV out there, watch it. Talk about it. Tell your friends to watch it. If there's a book you love, make somebody else buy it. If there's a wonderful Kickstarter out that you backed and you're excited about, tell a couple of friends to back it because Yeah, I'm worried about art.
Yeah.
We are at a low point right now, and the good news is that historically, every time there's been a low point, there's been some violent correction.
Yeah.
Uh, Scorsese, Coppola, those filmmakers in the '70s roaring back, and then and then the Sundance movement, in the '90s, similar thing where it's like we kind of hit this like commercial low point, and let's roar back with some art. And we've seen it in music with grunge coming out around the same time after a bunch of poppy nonsense. And um I don't know, it's a difficult time. So
Yeah.
support art, support artists, make art and make artists because we need it. um so yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously I'm kind of still thinking through how I feel about all of it, but I'm worried, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. But go to the movies. Pay to read books. Um, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I love about, having this channel is this is an outlet for me to talk to creators. But it is about getting to explore, and people getting to tell their stories and share their art, because I think it is something that we need. We need
yeah,
to experience that a little bit. So,
yeah.
um,
The signal boosting is really important. It's not something that gets enough of. I'm trying to I'm trying to get the Kickstarter moving and trying to get this books into people's hands and make it a reality and all that stuff. And not everyone with as crazy as stuff is right now, not everyone can afford to back the way they want to back, and so they
right,
feel bad about it, and a lot of times they end up doing nothing because they feel like a little something is going to be an insult. But there are so many ways to support one of these things, or any artist that you love. It's everybody thinks they need to come on and back for $30 or back for $100 or whatever. Literally coming in and backing for $1 is extremely valuable. More backers at any dollar amount, it fires up the Kickstarter algorithm. It means that they put the book in front of more people on the site, and that can be huge. So because you backed for $1, it may mean that three more people back for 50 that wouldn't have seen the project otherwise. So that's a huge thing. But then also, it's just I mean, if you don't have the dollar, then tweet, retweet, tap a friend on the shoulder and say, hey, look at this. That is the only way that these
right.
things, you know, uh, 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 become a reality and find their way into people's hands. And this is good stuff. There's so much great content on Kickstarter right now. If you can sort through all the booby books and stuff like that. Um, which is another thing that one could talk about, is that how Kickstarter has become about 80% booby books, and how it's becoming harder to find good artistic fun
Mhm.
stuff because of that. And there are good booby books out there. I mean, it's not really my genre, but I don't want to say that, but there's a lot of garbage too.
Yeah.
And what I am seeing is that I do okay because I have a whatever I have. I mean, I'm not some massive name, but I do have I have some name recognition, right? So I can
Yes.
go on and I will do a certain amount of money. It's people that are, it's kind of the middle class or whatever. And whatever, maybe I'm upper middle class, but I think that it's been harder for me. But maybe I'm more immune to it. But really, the people who are getting started and were really building a name for themselves, it got like 100% harder for them over these last couple of years. And um, so yeah, so I would go on Kickstarter, and after you back the Peacekeepers, um, find one or two other non-booby books that look interesting to you, or that are. I mean, the beauty of these things is if the pages are well organized, you'll see the reason to back or not right there.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, Bearded Comic Bro says that, if they're doing their job, you're going to see something like that on there.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just tough go. I'm worried about that also.
Yeah.
So the only way that we can change that, the only way that we can save all this stuff, is to do it. And so, I mean, the thing I will say is that I practice what I preach. If you go to the Peacekeepers Kickstarter and you click on my little icon, I've backed hundreds of these things myself. And I have another account where I've also backed hundreds of these things. Um so yeah, it's an ecosystem. Um, you know, we support each other, we lift each other up. Comics is art is a team sport. We either all win together or we all lose together. I am worried that we are losing right now. We are trailing, but there's a lot of game left.
Yeah, and you know, the Super Bowl shows anything, you can be trailing and come back and win. So
Yeah, yeah. Just gotta hang in there.
yeah,
Don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. That's my other little piece of advice.
probably probably solid advice there. So
Until further notice.
we'll let you know, gang. Again, go click the links in the description. Go support Peacekeepers. Go check out, find another one you like, but Peacekeepers first. That's the stipulation, gang. All right, then us. Go check out State of Consciousness. Rylan, where can people follow along with you?
You can find me on all forms of social media at Ryland Grant. That is RYLENDGRANT. I always spell it because it's not a real name. My parents just kind of drunkenly arranged letters and saddled me with it, and so now I have to spell it for everybody. But yeah, I'm on there acting a fool, causing a ruckus, posting Carl Weathers pictures, Mr. T pictures. So yeah, come find me. It's a hoot.
It is.
Yeah.
That is. Well, Rylan, it is always a pleasure to have you on. Talk about comics, talk about movies, kind of peel back the layers and get to see the behind the scenes of screenwriting and comic creating. So thanks so much, as always, for taking some time to talk about comics with me.
Yeah, it's always great to talk with you. And I mean, I didn't even make fun of Ohio State yet. So I don't know.
I know, right?
Maybe I should just leave that on the table. Yeah, yeah.
It's oh man, all right. Maybe we don't back peacekeepers now. No, just but with the look, that's what the great thing about comics are. They can bring two people whose fandoms
Yeah.
teach us that we should hate each other. They're like, nah, we're so cool. So
We're supposed to fight when we see each other, but we like Cobra Kai and Action Jackson and
and
American
so
Gladiators so much that we embrace. We put
we
our
look
differences
past
aside.
we look past those minor flaws. So
Yeah.
well, gang, go support Ryland. Go check out stuff. Follow along social media. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. But as always, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.